No, I don't believe Trudeau thinks his economic policies are helping the economy. I think his goal is to completely decimate the nation, and here's how I think he's going about it. First, you encourage people to buy anything and everything they possibly can. You artificially drown interest rates and keep them as low as politically possible in order to encourage overspending in the economy. You do this over a period of years and gradually lull the society into a false sense of I can spend forever and plunge deeper and deeper into debt, and nothing bad will ever happen. But bad things will happen, and they're happening now, most evidently perhaps in the housing market. Part of the Liberal platform last election was, quote, a home for everyone, end quote, by practically annihilating interest rates and forcibly encouraging banks to hand out mortgages, outrageous and risky mortgages, to just about anyone who could walk. The government artificially encouraged would-be, should-be renters to become homeowners. Purchasing a mortgage was exceedingly simple, way too simple, and few were ever rejected, broke or not. As such, the demand for home ownership skyrocketed. Because mortgages were so easy to come by, because it was so cheap to get a home, everyone wanted a home. Demand shifted to the right, and as a consequence, the price of housing soared. These price increases were exacerbated by the lockdowns and a gradual realization that people were now working from home, which meant that they needed a proper home to work from. While all of this was happening, Trudeau was, and still is, printing money. At the start, most of the new money ended up in the hands of commercial banks and not in the hands of common Canadians. As such, we saw inflation in two primary places: assets and the stock market. Even as things were stagnant, assets like housing and stocks continued to rise in, albeit artificial value. And because something like housing isn't calculated as part of the CPI, no one really noticed the spiking inflation. But then the economy locked down, and the country locked down, and people lost their jobs. In response, no doubt a planned response, Trudeau started injecting $2,000 checks into bank accounts, individual bank accounts. People used this cash to pay not for stock investments, but for groceries and gasoline. This injection of literally billions of dollars meant rampant inflation in the marketplace followed, and of course is still afflicting us today. If the Bank of Canada really wanted to crush inflation and return it to level zero, they destroy the cash that they've created to increase the value of an individual dollar, but they don't. Instead, they act as though there's some law that exists stating high interest rates equals low inflation. But if that's true, then why are places like Venezuela and Brazil and Zimbabwe and Turkey, all with demonstrably high interest rates, suffering from hyperinflation? Even Friedman figured out that no concrete law exists between high interest rates and low inflation when he said, quote, I thought the fallacy of identifying tight money with high interest rates and easy money with low interest rates was dead. Apparently, old fallacies never die, end quote. Trudeau's inflation means that everything is more expensive while wages remain stagnant or relatively stagnant. And as the bank ratchets up interest rates, inflation is still high. But now it's also increasingly difficult to pay your variable rate mortgage. As rates continue to rise again in a failing attempt to fight inflation, people will begin to default, and they will begin to default on their mortgages. And if they default on their mortgages, they'll be forced to sell their homes. Of course, the high rates and increasing inflation means no one is willing to spend so flagrantly as they were before. The demand for homes is contracting, so no one will be willing to buy a home. As such, sellers will need to lower the price of their homes in order to hopefully sell it. As this happens more and more often, the nation will realize that their homes aren't worth a fraction of what they once were, and the market will rupture and crash. And people who are paying a $700,000 mortgage on a home now only worth $400,000 will quite logically see no reason to keep paying the mortgage. They'll simply walk away from their homes, broke and destitute, while walking right into a new house, the only house that they think will be able to print some money in order to meet their needs, the House of Commons.